You've heard what Vincent Magwenya had to say, and I thought that, it sounds that he is taking time to make the right decision. We're hearing from our sources that initially he just wanted to resign. What can you tell us at this time?
Yes, indeed. There are so many considerations, and it is, yes, it's a person, it's a party, it is the whole government and state that are concerned, who are affected by this and by the set of very rapidly changing events. 12 hours is a very long time in politics today. 1 hour has been a long time in politics. And yes, of course, there is a personal aspect. The president should ideally not have been in this situation, especially given that he's been the torchbearer for cleanup, anti-corruption, etc., etc. And letting himself get into a situation where there are just too many questions, unanswered questions, questions that cannot be answered comfortably, should not have happened personally. And yet he remains the torchbearer for so many of the government campaigns. We see some serious knocks in currency and investment sentiment today, which certainly brings home the importance of the position and the bigger picture of what Cyril Ramaphosa as president had been working on. And I think I mentioned this because this is very much what I think that close group, the caucus around him, is trying to achieve, to stabilize the situation before he possibly, even probably, tenders his resignation, but to stabilize it and to ensure that there is some sentiment, some passion for continuity in what he was doing. And of course, the ANC conference is still going to be a totally different picture. I'm still, they would be brainstorming many different strategies on how to stabilize it and not just to hand over his block of solid support to a person, a grouping whom they see themselves as in contest with within the ANC. So there are all these different moving parts in the equation that have to be negotiated.
Is this unprecedented? And I ask that because former President Jacob Zuma survived a number of no-confidence motions. And we have seen the cut and thrust of ANC politics, Thabo Mbeki being ousted. Is this, though, for you something different, something more extraordinary?
Yes, the political climate, political culture in South Africa has changed in this time of Cyril Ramaphosa. Even if he came to be his own victim in many ways, but there is much better accountability, there is much more transparency, and there isn't that, above all, immunity, arrogant immunity that we saw in the time of Jacob Zuma. Above all wrongdoing and flat-out denial, this didn't happen. Now there are much more elaborate processes. For example, in Parliament and the panel, the rules that were put in place. That signifies a whole different era, and Cyril Ramaphosa is solidly in this era and also the victim of this era. So it's really unprecedented. The falls of two presidents and can really not be compared.
Do you think he should go?
Probably, and I say this with great hesitancy, but probably yes. In the overall scheme of things, yes, it wasn't public money, but there are questions of honesty and declaration and willingness to bring all possible evidence to the panel, to have that considered, to have that incorporated. Should he stay, there will be continuous questioning, there will inherent instability, much more contest. His opponents will be smelling blood all the time.
But if he's innocent, why not stay and fight? He says he's innocent.
Yes, that remains a possibility. It's definitely one of the scenarios that remain on the table, even if I go by all the different suggestions in the course of the day that indeed he will be tendering a resignation. But fighting from inside, it really would, I think, destabilize government, destabilize the presidency. It would continuously distract as the whole country, if not much broader than a country, work through all the evidence bit by bit and dissect it. It's not a very dignified situation to be in, especially not for a president. It's not Cyril Ramaphosa's style to lead from the front. But he, in his own type of way, has been a strong leader in pushing certain lines and ensuring that the necessary strategic alliances are formed to take forward anti-corruption and clean-up. And that whole project of his would be shattered in a process of simultaneously trying to promote that and fighting impeachment. So I don't think the two go together.
If he goes, will his campaigns to clean up the NPA, to eradicate state capture? We've seen the advances, we've seen SARS reviving, we've seen the NPA reviving. Does that have enough impetus to continue?
One certainly hope it does, but we cannot be assured of that because we know how big a battle it has been to bring the necessary capacity to those law enforcement, etc. kind of institutions. It has been a long battle. Just taking off, it needs continuous support. It's only starting to get out of the running blocks at this time. So there is a big possibility that that would not be pursued with the kind of commitment, determination that we have seen to now, even if it had not always, I have often not been up to expectation, the pace at which they made progress. And so that would need a lot of determination to take that forward. And that type of issue is probably one of the ones that are being fleshed out at this time, why we see delays in announcements.
Who in the ANC would be a good leader to take over even in a temporary capacity? Because we have seen that Zweli Mkhize, who at the moment is the only other name on the list to take the top spot, who also has a cloud hanging over him.
Yes, indeed, that is probably the biggest sticking point of the day. And it is a sign of the times of the state of ANC government, that the eggs have so much been in the Ramaphosa basket, and others have deferred to him so much that there has not been. We hear a lot about the new generation, younger generation coming up, alternative leaders in Ramaphosa's own generation, in his kind of age group. They have not really shone their political light and made progress in establishing themselves as alternatives. And that is a big gap in the ANC's transition strategies, that there is not an obvious clear-cut person to take over. There's a deputy president who will probably end up being acting president, and other people would have to step in that line. And so this is going to make the ANC's elective conference and whoever is elected there so much more important. And there isn't, in the Ramaphosa kind of caucus, if I can call it that, there isn't the obvious successor to step into that space. So it is going to be the Zweli Mkhizes and Paul Mashatiles who are probably going to pick up the slack in that space.
I have to ask you a final question about the ANC, because you've written so extensively about the ANC and you know the history and the culture of this organization. Is it fundamentally flawed at this point, or do you think this could have within it the seeds for a rebirth? There's so much talk about renewal. It's always part of the discussions. It's going to be part of the discussions if this ANC conference goes ahead as planned. Do you think that this party is fatally flawed?
I think it has increasingly become fatally flawed, yes, to the point that the current moment that we are living through today is equivalent to a type of implosion. There will be, and we've seen it, ANC picks itself up. There's always seems to be always another day for the ANC, and yet there is a relentless decline electorally in a type of trust people have in the ANC and in government. And in recent times, beyond just narrowly the ANC membership, Cyril Ramaphosa has had a huge role in building broader than just membership trust in the organization. And what has happened now It's not, we still see, we can hear from public pronouncements, there is still some trust remaining, even trust remaining in him, and him being compared with other ANC leaders and him still being seen as much better. And yet, in many ways, what has been happening now has really been a betrayal of that trust. And that trust has become so crucial to this moment in the ANC's existence, to it being able to persuasively put forward his own positions and go to a broader electorate out there and say, we've got a plan, we renew, we grow. That has fallen flat.
Thank you so much for joining us in studio this evening on such a pivotal day. Much appreciated. That, of course, is political analyst and author Professor Susan Booysen. And as Vincent Magwenya said, it is indeed an unprecedented and extraordinary moment in our constitutional democracy. Plenty more to come.